It's Unlock Chats with Sapta and Noni Kumalo on
Time for us to get into Unlock Chats. And tonight's conversation is a very controversial one and a very debatable one. And I'm so excited to have it with you. Remember, our Y app is available for you to send voice notes anytime in this conversation. Of course, on Unlock Chats, I ain't doing this alone, doing it with the incredible Noni Kumalo. Noni, good evening.
Hello, how are you, Sapta?
I'm good, thanks, and you?
Happy to be here.
I'm excited about tonight's conversation because we're tackling quite one would call it a controversial conversation.
Yes, 100%, because we're going to be talking about men and women and their roles in these relationships. So it's definitely a contentious one tonight.
But I believe that when it comes to specific when it comes to specific genders, and those genders' responsibilities, and when you say you, Noni, as my wife, your responsibilities are, and you say Sapta as my husband, your responsibilities are, a debate could start just from that.
100%. And I mean, also the evolution of relationships, right? Like how our parents were in their relationships versus where we are today. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one tonight.
And of course, in between all of this conversation of gender roles, we have to touch on equality because we are having this conversation. And I think the foundation of it is really that equality in relationships. We are joined, of course, by a medical doctor and certified relationship coach. Her name is Dr. Phetla. Definitely a good friend of the show. She has helped us navigate many conversations relating to love and marriage. Doctor, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me again. Hello to you and your listeners.
It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Things have been different ever since from the last time you were here. We've got Noni Kumalo now joining us on Unlock Chats. So
hi, Noni.
Hi, Doc. You good?
I'm good.
Fantastic.
Hope you're good too.
I am.
So don't be surprised if she's not on your side or if she is on your side when it comes to this conversation.
Okay.
Doctor, let's get straight into it. Gender roles. What are we talking about when we talk gender roles?
I think like it's saying there's the issue of gender, then there's the issue of roles. So to some extent, there's the issue of function. And which, of course, in the era that we're living in, there's a lot of, that's why you guys also introduced it as a controversial topic for discussion, because so many people have so many inputs around this. But after all is said and done, we always have to go back to, is it working out? Is it functional? Not that, is it something I like? Is it exciting? Is it fashionable? We have to go back to function.
And what does functionality talk to when we talk specifically relationships and gender roles? Because sometimes you'll find that my wife's function is totally different from mine, and society would view it as something that should be done by me as the man. It becomes a little bit confusing there, and personally you'll find that it's functional for us.
Okay, so from what you're saying, the core of any relationship is always about, from the start, communication. And communicate in terms of expectations. Because most of the time the gap comes in that each one in this relationship has expectations, but most of the time they are not even communicated. And during the communication, we also have to understand that, okay, and agree that in terms of our relationship, what is the aim or the outcome that we want from our relationship? That's part of communication. That is actually the core. So it has to be clear, what are we doing here? Are we doing this to build a family, and what does that look like? The children, how is the parenting going to look like here? Financially, how is it going to work? Meeting each other's physical needs, how is that going to work? Or are we doing this for fun, or are we going to be like business partners? We're going to party together, we're going to do stuff together. I mean, all those things must be communicated. So the biggest breakdown in relationships is the expectations that are not communicated and or not managed.
Doctor, is it even possible that gender roles in a relationship can be equal?
It's not possible. As much as people say, it's not.
I told you about Noni. Did you hear that?
No, she has her reasons. She has her reasons, and she must have basis for that. It's fine.
Yeah.
She has her reasons for that. It's fine. So it can be equal the same way that a man cannot carry a child.
Yeah.
So already just starting with that already is not equal because of function, how this human was created to carry a child. Only a woman was designed in that way. And when it comes to carrying heavy things, a man was designed to be able to carry heavy things. When you look at the musculature of a man, it's different from a woman. So of course we say, okay, there's equality. That is a very debatable thing to say. What is equality?
Yeah.
It's debatable because we are fighting, let's say as women, we want equality. And it comes from a good place. Most of these things we never got to a place where we say, what does this equality look like? Because yes, we know there was a time when the woman was so oppressed. Even today, I mean, there are still women in relationships who don't have, because they are not developed, or they cannot create they don't have any form of income, they don't have a voice. Then you have a man who comes from a certain background. I'm just talking extreme now. He's a narcissist.
Yeah.
This woman doesn't have peace in this relationship because of his own background. He's executing what he knows.
Yeah.
Right. So those extremes exist. And then there's other extremes where the opposite is true. The woman herself comes from a place where she had to learn just to be tough because she saw her mother doing that. Her mother had to survive the abuse. And then she totally goes the other way that we don't expect as women, where she actually oppresses the men. Because there are men that are being abused.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
So this equality must really be, it must have this basis. What are we talking about, and how will it look in terms of our function? Because if a function of a woman is to, I'm talking from function now, you carry a child, meaning you have the connection, the direct connection with this child, that cannot be cut by any rule, law. Only the mother can sense the needs of this child, and only the mother is given the heart to meet the needs of the child. And then now we have equality. We are going up the ladder. We're more educated.
Yeah.
We're more developed. We can make more money. But remember, to do all of those things, then it means you can't be home for these children.
Yes.
And that's equality. That is what equality is being sold as now. And then we get to the future. And then as children now, we struggle to engage with relationships. We're struggling with addictions. We are struggling to cope with life. Our mental health is always at stake, and we have to do so much just to keep afloat. Our perspective is totally distorted. And then we ask, what is the problem? But no one ever sat us down and say, guys, as you're doing this, can we have it in a structured way so that we don't interfere with communities, with the family, with stability of the very country that you still need capable and solid and functional adults to be able to execute what they need to execute. So now all of us are asking, the parents are asking, what's wrong with these children? What's wrong with this man? What's wrong with this? So everybody's asking each other, but no one ever said, but where were the mothers and where were the fathers in terms of creating an environment that is an enabling parenting environment for women to actually parent? And then where were the mothers in the discussions to say, women, as we grow up in power, money, influence, let us not forget these children that we bring in this world. And if we're not ready, and if we don't have the time, let's delay having these children.
Yeah. You know, Doc, no remorse I think one in Nalwena Reshap. You know, in the sense that you're being honest in saying that, you know, we forget that the woman carries the child, that the man just physically is much stronger than women. But in a world where women are given opportunities, more women are working. I also find that sometimes, you know, the individual with more financial power in the relationship uses it to their advantage, which I feel like messes up the gender roles, because you find that a lot of couples today, it's the woman that's earning a lot more money than men, which really complicates, you know, gender roles, you know, in this in the relationship. Can you just take us through why we're finding ourselves in the situation where basadi are earning more than men, but also they probably feel a little bit more powerful, and at some point then become slightly abusive because of this financial power that they have?
Yes, so to every present, there's a history. So if we take it back a little bit, we existed in a time where there was apartheid in South Africa, just talking South Africa, where under general the black person was oppressed. And the biggest part of the oppression is then the man has to leave his family, go find a job far away to take care of the basic needs of his family. Then he's left home, his wife and kids, who they have to let him go because what are they going to eat? Now, this is a new structure. So the man leaves that woman stressed with kids, not enough money, no support. This woman has to make a plan while still waiting for money to come at some point. And then now this man, the working conditions are so bad, oppressed, no confidence, he has to be drunk all the time just to cope with the work. And while he's there, this man has physical needs. Then he makes another woman pregnant. So, and then there's another woman pregnant because sometimes part of the alcohol is you take risky decisions. So eventually this man has 3 different women at the workplace that are pregnant. All are hoping that this man will bring something on the table for her to take care of her own kids and family. So just one man can create so many broken families, brokenness coming from the non-presence of a mother and a father, which is created like that for a reason. We did not create that, so we cannot change the rules. We did not create that, so the brain itself knows it needs an input from the sperm donor and the egg donor. They created this person. So now we've created that structure, we've broken that structure, and then we get to the future, then eventually there is a democracy. Then democracy says, guys, we're free now. Women, you're going to get jobs, children, relax, no more like harsh discipline, which of course there was a place for that. But then eventually, even parents now are like hands up, they are relaxing, they're like kids themselves because there's freedom. Then the kids are not regulated because the parents are also trying to get into this new state that has never been experienced before, not regulated. No one was actually even prepared for this. Then you have kids that parents were not at the time present to say, okay, parenting is still parenting 101. You watch your child, you nurture your child, you correct this child. If they've done well, you've done well. If their behavior is not good, you correct them. You are there to hold your child, look your child in the eyes, because the most important thing for any child in the first 7 years of their lives is attachment and authenticity. And those things can only happen if the parenting environment is ideal. So now you have so many parents who are not present, and this whole thing of freedom, we don't even know what freedom means. It just sounds like do what you want. Then people leave their places. And then now, if you look now, the sketch, or also with social media coming into play, the sketch of mental health cases that are reported, forget the ones that are not even reported, is super high. Super high. And part of that is, unfortunately, the neurodevelopment, the brain development at a time that was supposed to happen did not happen for many. And we're also confused to say, what are our roles though now? Because there's women empowerment that is being legislated. It's being structured to say, okay, women, it's your turn, go up there. Especially black women, you guys suffered the most. Okay, you go up there. And then we are all rushing up. And we really see the difference because now you're the first one to buy a car, you're the first professional, you can afford things that people never afforded before. But no one really warned us about the long-term impact of not being able to parent these children. So now we get to the future. Everybody's surprised why we have more of men that are okay now to be taken care of by women. Why? And they don't even feel bad about it. Why we have more powerful women, so to say, and powerless men, because this is structured. So it's more like even men are scared to speak on average now, because once you speak, we're onto you. You're oppressive. What are you saying about me? And of course, there are men that are oppressive, because remember, if you're not raised well, you will not be okay. It's either you're going to be too aggressive or too passive. Both of them are not good. Then men are even scared to say what they really want from their women. But we can say what we want from you, because remember, we are empowered now. It's our time. We tell you what you want, but if you say what you want, you're an oppressor. You don't want to see women advancing. So it's complicated.
It's very complicated, Doctor, and I'm glad you touch on that because it's funny that just earlier on this morning I go on social media and the first video I watch is of a young man saying that corporate South Africa is no longer hiring young black men, and a lot of young black men find themselves idling, and Noni touched on something that is happening in society right now, that when women are earning more than men, they tend to emasculate the man.
Exactly.
What are the long-term dangers of such dynamics in society? Because men nowadays, as you said, one can say we are voiceless.
Yep.
We are voiceless.
Yeah. And remember, we don't even give you the space to speak, because based on the ones that are being reported to be abusing women, the ones that are trying their best still do not have a footing in the whole thing. So you have to be politically correct all the time.
Yes.
So now when you have men who are not able to be pushed to be men, which means that men must work. I mean, the more we say, no, women can do what they want, men can do what they want, and a woman can act like a man, and. So unfortunately, then it confuses the brain. Because remember, the brain has wiring. I mean, there's a reason that men would have more testosterone. That is not political. That is not legislation. That is not a personal belief. It's like that. There's a reason that women have more estrogen and progesterone. Because they regulate certain things. They regulate how we think, how we feel. A woman will go on her cycle because of this. A man would have, their own sexual cycle in a certain way. There's certain things that they do because of all this physical and neuropsychological dynamics. So we cannot change that. So now when we're forcing human behavior to adapt to what we want, to override function, then there's a whole distortion. Then men don't know now how should they act. Then they don't know now should they act more like, because now you have women that are powerful, really powerful. I mean, if you have money, you are powerful because you can make the rules. You are paying for the bills. But then in that situation, remember, a man is totally going to feel helpless because by nature, for some reason, it's natural, it's innate that a man feels more useful when they feel like they are contributing, they are contributing towards, this outcome. And then now when that is taken away from them, then you have a lot of men sitting around. Then they must start looking, okay, should I look for other men to take care of me now? Because I cannot get a job. I can't take care of myself. What is plan B? Do I go into crime? Okay.
Yes.
Then you've got men that say, okay, I'm going to marry a woman now because I've got power. You really do. Then in a relationship, you've got a man who, his sexual drive is just going to die just from not having confidence of knowing that he's a man. He just loses the confidence. So there are things that will just not happen. Then you have a family where this woman, if as a woman, it's very few of us who will still be able to talk to a man with dignity when he's not working. It's very few of us, and it depends on the context.
Yeah.
But keep in mind the other men who go out of their way not to work because they know there's a new breed of women in town who are more than happy to take care of themselves. They don't need a man. But then for the men who's sitting there who are trying to build something, and then he can't get this job or he lost this job, it just totally kills their ego and they're stuck. And then they have to go out there to find their confidence with a woman who appreciates whatever little they have. Because now, for you here, looking at this man who's so useless now, like, how do you respect him?
Where did we lose it, Doctor? And where should we start working on in order for us to change this thing? Is it the woman that needs to learn to be a little bit more submissive in understanding that there is a role of men in society and there is a role of women in society, regardless of money, regardless of position? Or is it men having to be taught that women are now this, and this is how society is evolving too?
Yeah.
Where do we fix? How do we fix?
Yeah, so there's no way. As much as, mass media is trying to promote this idea of do you, there's They say, do you, boo? Unfortunately, it's not going to work because the level of dysfunction that is being experienced by children and adults at the same token cannot be denied. And people are not talking about their struggles. They only post the perfection. But people know when they're sitting by themselves at home that this is not working, this is working. I mean, by the time that you are powerful, but you have to self-fulfill certain things because you are not willing to be, a tender woman to a man. I mean, that tells tale. But at the same time, men also need to come to. So you can't fix men or fix women because this was created. So now we have to start being honest with ourselves to say, what are we doing? What are we working towards? Who are we fighting here? And eventually, what are we saying? Because whatever that we're producing in form of children, that we take lightly, that we just randomize sex, is a casual thing, is your choice. I mean, it's your body. Do what you want. But then we're not given the responsibility of this child that you are bringing to this world. And then you're not going to take responsibility because now you are so self-indulged because you have the choice now. The idea of choice is really killing the family. First of all, it kills the individual. Then it kills the family. By the time it kills the family, then you take into the world dysfunctional products. Then we get there, you're like, what's going on, guys? What is this? We're only identifying symptoms now, but we never gave ourselves time to say, what is the core? So now when you come to a doctor, when you tell me you have pain, the pain is not the problem. The pain is the body's way of reporting the problem. So my function as a doctor is to locate where is the problem, because until I get to the source of the problem, if it's not the symptom, even if I resolve this symptom, the body will find another way to communicate again. To say, I still haven't found help.
Yeah.
Doc?
Until we get to the source.
Doc, you mentioned that when we come to you identify or you diagnose the problem. We've diagnosed the problem, which is that this entire thing is systematic. It's a system that was put in place to empower women, and and men don't necessarily have jobs, right? We almost know what the problem is. So how do couples then address this situation in their households to ensure that we raise kids that are conscious, we raise kids that are disciplined, and that they can raise their families, positively going forward? How do we then address it in the household?
Yeah. So with that being said, first of all, we have to agree that there's a problem. And we have to accept that we need to resolve the problem. And part of that, we must realize that we're not each other's enemy, because that's how we're behaving. In a relationship, the man ends up thinking the woman is the problem, the woman thinks the man is the problem. Each one is trying to prove a point, and then each one has their own people and input from somewhere. Then they come into the relationship with input from social media, from friends, from the pastor, from Inyanga, from the mother-in-law. Then they bring them here. So now we have to agree that, first of all, look, we're messing up our own futures here. So let's agree there's a problem. Let's accept that we have to fix it and realize that we're not each other's enemy. What we need to now start focusing on the real thing. When you're in a relationship, you're not there for fun or just for selfish reasons. It has to be something bigger than just you and you fulfilling your physical needs and your ego needs. What is the bigger mission of this relationship? Otherwise, you could have just stayed alone and got some sex toys, right? But if you're in a relationship with someone, what outcomes are you looking for? Like, what's the point that you're with someone but you never want to be in the house when they're there? What's the point that you're with someone but you make sure that you don't put that money down and it will make their life easier? What's the point of being somebody that you bash with all the time? What's the point of being with someone in a relationship who tells that, okay, for me, if you do this for me, this will give me confidence. I think this will help me. And then you just ignore them. So eventually we need to be real with life. It doesn't mean if something is trending or is legislated is the right thing. We know, even if we say we don't know, but then let's get help, education, seek out, but understand that we have to do it as a team to achieve the objective that we agree that this is the objective for relationship. Let's be each other's, support, advisor. let's research together and agree together. So we can't talk here and then you go talk to somebody else, come with a different thing, then you start fighting because you got something else. So now let's agree that we are the core. Anyone else, anything else is an outsider.
Sure.
Doctor, you know, women who still go according to the traditional way of gender roles that I've experienced in my circles find it very difficult to talk on social media or in public to say, I clean for my man, I cook for my man, you know, I serve my man, or I serve my husband, purely because of the backlash.
Yes.
Would you say this backlash is valid because we are in the times that we live in now? Is those traditional gender roles still relevant in 2024?
They're absolutely relevant, and we should make them relevant. That's the thing. We should fight to make them relevant. I mean, now when as women we feel ashamed to say that I'm going to spend time with my husband, or I'm going to do this for my husband, I'm taking my kids there. I mean, when we do that to each other, then obviously we feel ashamed, because remember the mainstream now says, I'm not for the kitchen. It's always presented in different ways to say this is so bad and so low. I mean, do you, boo, again. But no one talks about the dysfunction, that what happens when the mother is always on social media, posting herself and not attending to the children. And then when you say, I'm cooking for my family, it's like, okay, why don't you do this somewhere else? But it's a reflection of the frustration of those who have also not found, because remember, there's also difficulty in identifying the right partner. I mean, even yourself, if you have not worked on yourself, or you're unfortunate to grow up in an environment where you didn't witness a nurturing, loving family, you don't know how to produce that. So now when somebody is talking about something that is unfamiliar to you and you can't relate, or you have not found it yet for yourself, you'll criticize it until you find it. Then suddenly, when you find it, then suddenly marriage is good. But while you're still looking, you didn't find the right guy, you're stressing with this one, or that you couldn't find the right woman, then you're like, don't tell us about that. And then we criticize it, and you're really made to feel ashamed. I mean, even for myself, talking for myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a medical doctor. I have an MBA. I was running my own practice. But at some point, I cut that. I said, I'm going to cut that. And cutting that means I'm also cutting my salary. And I had a lot of women asking me that, I mean, don't you feel like you're wasting your talent? I mean, you're so brilliant. You should be working. And I was like, look, my highest function as a woman who brought children to this world is to make sure that I develop these children to be able to perform at their best and to be functional and not disturb and bother other people in the future.
Sure.
So now I can be great to you because you see my qualifications, you can see that I can make this money. But what about the remnants and the responsibilities that I have? So that conversation, like you're saying, many women feel uncomfortable, and you avoid looking like you are a wife, or you're this certain type of wife. And if you don't undress, then, you know, it's like you're boring or whatever. And you also know what happens psychologically. Just a tip on this one. The reason that when you post something and you're undressed, or you show more skin and you get more likes, this is actually what we call, there's a concept of psychoneuro endocrine cycle. Like, it's a whole thing. So what we look at, it is the body, the brain releases a lot of dopamine, because it's shocking to see somebody as undressed. It's fascinating.
Yes.
So now then you get a lot of, like, it's really fascinating compared to somebody who's totally covered. Like, dopamine is not released, and dopamine is very addictive. So now you notice that if you post when you're more undressed, or men that show off more of fleshy cars, fleshy this, it releases dopamine. So that's addictive for the one who is posting and for the one who's watching. But then we forget that you're actually also making people numb to something that they're supposed to appreciate, because they see it so much that they don't appreciate it anymore. So this alone is physiology, is psychology, is astrology that we cannot deny, and no one is telling us about what actually happens in our brains.
And that's true, Doc. That's true. I mean, this past weekend I went to a strip club, and literally, like, I was numb. I was numb to everything that I was seeing.
It was a lot.
No, because we see it on Instagram. We see it.
Oh, you mean because, yes, I get what you mean.
So what I was seeing there was nothing new.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay.
Was she?
And
You didn't even invite her, Sabta.
but to just emphasize on your point, Doctor, is to say,
yes.
because I on Instagram I see it, on Twitter I see it. I could even go to the club, which is not supposed to be a strip club. I'll get there and I'll see almost naked girl. And now you become numb to it.
You're not moved.
I'm not moved at all. I'm not moved at all.
Yeah, and I think that becomes dangerous because I feel like then you want more and more and more.
Yeah.
And people
you want
give
more
more.
Dangerous.
Yeah, more. But
then you want something risky.
Yeah, that's very true. Earlier you mentioned, the need for us to really be real with life. And I feel like there's this fine line between being realistic and women knowing what they so deserve, right? So we spoke about the system and how women are making more money. But in that, we still have women that say, well, I want a man with money. But the reality is not a lot of men are making a lot of money. Does this mean that women are then just going to die lonely that are successful?
Sorry, can you just repeat the last part? Does it mean women would?
Does it mean that women who are successful and doing well, who have a desire to marry men with money, considering that there's a shortage of that, are they then just going to die lonely, unmarried?
Fortunately, they can afford to pay for any man to come over.
Oh.
They can afford to buy expensive sex toys. But that being said, eventually, when all is said and done, every human being responds to touch, to a real person. At some point, when you're younger, what you want when you're younger and when you get older is totally different. So when you're still growing up, you're powerful, you've got options. And when you get to your 40s plus, you realize that, okay, my options are limited. Then you start wanting the basics now. You just want the basic thing, somebody to just be there. You travel with them, you talk to them, tell them about. So those things money cannot buy. That's the thing. But like you're saying, then you've got a high influx of women who have so much money, and there's not a good number of men who can meet the need of those women. And keep in mind, that type of woman, as she's up there, she's also not willing to compromise with a man who's not at her level. At the time, until she's at her peak of saying, okay, I've reached my peak and I cannot find fulfillment and no money can fulfill me. Then she just wants a simple life of just talking, eating, going to functions together. And by that time, then most men are committed. Then you have to also either borrow somebody's man, which is another stress.
Yeah.
You see, or choose other alternative options to fulfill that option. So we're in a dilemma because this is global in actual fact, where you have high number of women who are like wealthier than men or afford better than men, and most men also don't feel comfortable to be with such women because then there's always those undertones that they don't feel comfortable themselves. Their confidence just goes under, and then others become passive, others become aggressive and start being abusive because they cannot handle this power dynamic. So it's a challenge.
But why must we reach 40 for people to make that realization, Doc? Where are these conversations being had? Why must I only get to the age of 40 where I realize actually all these things that I work so hard for, that are great, that are, amazing, are actually not as important as touch, going out on a date with my husband, being with my kids in the park. Why must I reach 40 to make that realization?
But remember, it's the social engineering that we have. And like you're asking, what can we do now? We should start having these conversations of saying, guys, let's be real. How can we build better societies? How can we build better families? How do we build ourselves to know that we are human beings first before you are a man or a woman, before you are a boyfriend or a girlfriend, before you're a husband or a wife? Because we are not having real conversations, if at all. Conversations, most people are even scared to talk about marriage because people are like, no, marriage is not everything. It's true, it's not everything. But the reality also is that you cannot live by yourself and lingering around and still doing what people do in a marriage. And yes, we know there are a lot of marriages that are dysfunctional because many children grow up in dysfunctional circumstances. So now can we start talking about the dysfunctions? Can we start talking about our past? Can we start talking about what happened to us when we were young? And then how do we work on these things now? How do we make sure that it doesn't happen again? And how do we avoid using our pain and justifying our choices and behaviors today as if this is my choice, instead of saying this comes from my pain?
Sure, Doc.
Yeah.
You've just dropped a bomb. And you know what, Doc? There's no better feeling, especially the older you get, to get to a home and kala.
Yeah.
Oh, the pizza di alla di ritlo ntate. The house is warm, the lights are on, you know, the bed is warm. And I think the older you get, as you say, you realize that there are certain things that are much more important than money and status. And a lot of people unfortunately realize that at a later stage, because you'll hear some people saying that, but I don't want that life. I don't want that life of having kids.
Yeah.
I don't want that life of getting married. What do we say about such people, Doc?
You know, I always say, you know, if something was created to be in a certain way and suddenly you don't want what was created to be, the question is, why not? So can we take it back and find out why you despise something that is supposed to be beautiful? Because we need to know what happened to your mom, what happened to your dad, what happened to you, how was the parenting environment for you? Because that influences how we experience life today. So you won't just hate it if it was presented beautifully to you. So you don't want it for a reason, definitely. There's a reason you don't want it. But then because you don't want it, don't make it look bad. Just do it the way that you want to do it, but do it responsibly. For me, it's always about the kids. If you know you don't want this family thing, don't just have a child when you know you'll not be able to meet the needs of the child. Because how are you going to meet the needs of the child when you just bring this child because you can afford to? You don't need the man. But then the parenting environment, first of all, you'll not even be present to raise this child because you are so busy. You are making money. You're growing up the ladder. So you leave this child that you bring into this world whose primary need is to get attachment and authenticity, which are violated if the parenting environment is not good. So it doesn't. We're not talking only abuse. I mean, just the mother not being there for the child that she brought into this world because she's always busy. Yes, she's got nannies. She can afford nannies. She can afford crash, and then you just dump the child there. I mean, there was even a research done showing that a child who is raised by a present mother who has an environment that is healthy to nurture this child, to touch this child, to look them in the eyes, compared to a child who was left in a cot at crèche with a nanny. The emotional outputs are different. Their disease profile is different. Their mental health status in the future is different. So it tells you that some of the things we can't change them just because we have money and power and voice. So we have to work with nature and understand to a point that if a child comes into a very healthy parenting environment, even the genetics that were inherited from the parents can be overcome. So we say the environment, even the parenting, a healthy parenting environment has even more power than genetics.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Doc, before we let you go, we've got some few messages on our Y app, and I want you to weigh in on some of these messages from the unlockers. But before you do that, let's take a quick break.
Sabda and Noni Kumalo on Y.
All right, let's get straight into it. We got some messages on our Y app. Doctor, first message from Anonymous says, "Hi, Dr. Bibi, Phetla, and the team. I want to share my story about my boyfriend." Right? It says that I've been with him for 5 months, and he's a very typical guy. Even though we are in varsity and we live in res, he wants to be the man of the relationship. He wants me to cook for him every night and bring him food to his room and do his laundry every weekend. I really love him, but I don't know if what I'm doing is normal or not. Are gender roles normal in my relationship, and what can we do? This is from a lady in varsity. Uphaku umjolo ke dog. It's not marriage, this one.
Yeah, I think you said it. So there's nothing wrong with that. So that's where the communication comes in to say, okay, what are you expecting from me? What am I expecting from you? But definitely, she started too early. The gentleman hasn't committed anything for him to get all those packs.
Mm-hmm.
Those packs come with marriage.
Commitment, yeah. Unfortunately, it's commitment. And it's not to say commitment secures the relationship.
Okay.
But you also want to do the basics. Because, I mean, if you just randomly do things, and then usually in cases like this, once you finish studying together, after you've done all of this, he leaves. Once you guys, you finish your studies, he meets, and then you happen to work there in another province, he's in that province. He meets a woman who says, I want commitment. I know what I want. I'm ready to do 1, 2, 3. I want this type of man.
Yeah.
And then he dumps you and marries this one within 3 months. And then you have been the cook and the cleaner, and because he also, to some extent, it's difficult for men to find value when you give up everything without demanding anything.
Yeah, but Doc, what if as a man I want to see if I can marry this woman, and I want to see if she's able to take care of me like that?
I get those things. You don't need an expert type of thing. Men other guys even say, make a baby for me first. I want to test if you can make a baby first before I commit. So you can't put such measures. I think it's more that mutuality of saying there must be justice in the relationship.
Yeah.
So, but part of the justice also comes in, just profiling the type of person, a woman or man that you want. First of all, it's a reflection of yourself. So if you have not worked on yourself, most likely you'll choose something that you will change your mind once you start working on yourself. So that's why it's always good to work on yourself a little bit first.
Yeah.
So that the choice that you make, even if you continue developing, is still within, is competitive enough, if I can put it that way. But now if you just take what is there in your poverty, you just came from home, there's poverty, and here you are, then suddenly you're an engineer. Then you realize that, no man, my options are better now. I can choose better. So that's why I always say delay making a commitment until you feel like you're in a better place, so that your choice or the choice from both sides, it mustn't be far from what you'd ideally want, even if you are in a better place.
Doc, it's been an incredible conversation that we've had with you, but maybe just to close off our Unlocked Chats for tonight, what advice do you have for people who are really struggling with gender dynamics within their relationship?
Yeah, I think first of all, the question should be whose voice are they listening to? Their decisions, their choices, what they prefer, what is it based on? And is what they're doing working? Because even if you prove a point in a relationship, but you're with somebody who is totally emotionally disconnected from you, because you get to get away with whatever, then there's no point. But to build a relationship where you can be vulnerable together and respect each other as human beings first, and talk and discuss to say, what do I want? Because you want to get to that vulnerable place with each other, because that's the most beautiful place to experience a relationship where there's no defensiveness, maliciousness, and backstabbing in a relationship. So if you're not planning to build something that will make you be vulnerable to each other in a safe way and create beautiful things, you should really question yourself why you do not desire that, or why you do not want to create such thing. What are you defensive about? What do you need to work on?
Doc, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for enlightening us and those ladies besaba well about the beauty.
Thank you so much for having me.
About the beauty of a relationship when it's done right, and it's done the right way. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Where can people check you out on social media?
www.drbbspeaks.co.za.
Doctor?
Everything is there. BB. So my name, Witumelo.
Okay.
Witumelo. So Dr. BB speaks.co.za.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Doctor. Have a good evening. Till next time. Relationships need coaching, so we're going to definitely get in touch soon.
Thank you, guys. Nice meeting you, Noni.
Lovely meeting you, Doc. That was awesome.
Keep well. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Now you know, Nons.
Yeah, and she speaks, hey?
Yeah.
When she says Dr. Bibi speaks, she speaks for real.
Do you cook for your man?
I'm not a great cook, Sapta, but when I can, I'll make some eggs.
But that's something.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
Do you clean for him, though?
Yes, I do. I'm
Okay.
definitely the cleaner individual.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but my life gets hectic. I think we have a beautiful balance in our relationship. I think we're both pretty vulnerable with each other.
Nice.
And we speak well. And I think maybe that's why it's lasted so long sometimes. I don't know.
That's good. That's good. You're so right. I think it shouldn't only come from the woman's perspective, in the sense that when we speak gender roles, we're expecting women to clean, cook, and do whatsoever. I think men have also a very important role in serving women.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't mean just because she's the woman, it means she must clean and cook Monday to Sunday. No, chief. It doesn't work like that. And the reality is that women nowadays are working.
Yeah. And
You
they
know?
work long hours, Sapta. And
They
if you're
work
at
long
home,
hours.
if you are at home and she's coming home at 9, why can't you make dinner?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. But ningayiqheli kaloku, ningathi siyancedisana ndithi.
No, it's true.
Siyancedisana.
Yeah, I think it's a give and take. And I think in a relationship, like the doc said, we need to communicate.
Absolutely.
We need to know what the expectations are in the relationship. And I think in that way, it'll work out quite beautifully.
And I think it's very important for us to continue with such conversations.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, go home and have this conversation with your partner. And even tomorrow at work, continue this conversation about gender roles, so that even in our pockets of spaces, in our small circles, we have this discourse, we have this debate, so that you can fix the current situation we have in relationships right now, because it is just a mess.
It is a huge mess.
It is a mess. Kuthiwa ufuna mali awujoli.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That time men don't have jobs.
If you don't have a BBL, you can't get a man with money.
Yes.
That's crazy.
It's crazy, Sapta.
Absolutely crazy. Nonsense.
Yeah.
That's how I wrap it up. Back again tomorrow, yeah?
See you then.
Monday to Thursday, 7 to 10 p.m. Why?